Hello, beautiful sisters. Alfie's joining us right from the start tonight. I've got the song in the background that helped create the space for me tonight. I love this song. This is I just want you to hear. We all need a little soulshine. Yes, Soulshine, Michael Franti, and to me, that's what little children, they are little souls shining. So that was just the perfect song for me today. And it's also, I realized as well, this is one of the songs that I decided a long time ago I want played at my funeral. A weird thing to bring in there, but hi Lyra. But yeah, I guess I know probably more than lots of people how, birth and death, they can come a lot closer than we expect, but they're also just part of this journey of why we're here. So welcome, sisters, to Sitting with Sisters tonight. We have the lovely Lyra that is going to be joining us tonight. Before I bring her in, and we cross our fingers and toes that it's all going to happen perfectly tonight. It's all looking good. I just want to take a moment to just really become present here, and to acknowledge the traditional caretakers of the land that we are on, wherever we are on this beautiful planet. That those caretakers did such a good job that for them, we were the future generations, and we're able to be here, we're able to gather here and to have these conversations. They took care of this beautiful place so that their children could feel safe and be nourished by this planet. And I hope that we can learn and find a way to leave this planet in a better condition. I think that needs to be our aim, to leave this place better than we arrived in it. I don't know that as a whole we're doing a great job with that, but I think that especially conversations like the one we're having tonight, these things are going to help us actually start to make a difference and hopefully leave this place and leave our children in a better place when we move on. So without further ado, let's try and bring Lyra in. Come on, technology, work for me tonight. Oh, it's looking good. Yay! Yay! Hello.
It worked. Hi, lovely to see you.
Yeah, you too. Welcome.
Thank you. I feel like I'm a bit close.
You look lovely.
Thank you. Wow, this is exciting.
It is. It's so good to have you here. I'm so glad that, we were able to get you in here to, share about the amazing work. From the moment that I heard about your work, I've just been so... I've been excited, but also there's just been this feeling of this is so important and I want more people to know about this, and I'm so glad that you're doing this work.
Thank you. Yeah.
So
yeah, no, it's a, yeah.
How about you share a bit about you and what your work is and, what you do?
Sure. Yeah, sure. Thanks, Megan. Well, I firstly am a mum to two, and when I was pregnant, a good friend gave me a book called The Aware Baby, and it was all about the aware parenting approach. And this was 8 years ago now. My son, eldest, is turning 8 next year, and I really resonated with the concept of aware parenting. And then soon after I had Finn, I found hand-in-hand parenting, and that resonated as well. They're very similar approaches. There's some differences, small differences there, but basically the idea behind it is that connection is the key. Our relationship with our child is what is first and foremost needed to maintain that connection, to nurture that connection in order for our children to fully function in this world. And it was through learning that and learning about children's emotions and the brain science behind it, and also the support that parents need in able to kind of parent in this way, or to understand their children, or to be there for their children emotionally. That's what sort of drew me into these approaches, and to then becoming a hand-in-hand instructor and an aware parenting instructor over the last I think 3 years ago now, that I was certified in that, and have been supporting parents since then. So I think, what sets it apart from most of the other gentle parenting or peaceful parenting approaches, there's a lot of information out there, attachment parenting, all of those beautiful things which I draw from. But I think what sets it apart is that real sense of deep support that parents need, or everyone needs really, but to be able to then be present for someone else, whether it's a child or your friend or family or whoever it may be, but really understanding where that support is sometimes the missing piece. Like there's all you can, and that's what happened with me. Like I had 2 young children. I knew all this intellectually. I had these grand ideas about how I wanted to parent, how I wanted to bring up my children peacefully, gently, all of those things. But I found that I was still, going back into moments where I wasn't parenting the way that I wanted to, or I, was doing or saying things that, it's like, where is this coming from? And through a deep exploration of myself and my past, and through getting the support that I needed, I was able to come to, it's still a journey, but it's still, being able to come from that place and put into practice those ideas. So that's what I aim to help parents with. A very long answer there. Once I start talking about it, it keeps flowing. But yeah.
Well, I mean, it's such a big area, and like you're talking about the connection with children, and the thing I'm getting back into, like I've in the past watched and listened and read a lot of Brene Brown stuff, and even in our conversation last week, I know Millie was calling us Saint Brene. Just especially in the last couple of weeks or something, and she talked about like the most important thing for us is connection. Like it is without that, like what do we have? And so when we're talking about that with our children, and you know, these beings that, you know, we end up being completely responsible for, yeah, how, I guess, what that, and I guess those relationships as well, like what that brings up for us, and what can get in the way, ourselves.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, it's, you know, it's so funny. You think, you know, most of the parents I speak to, you think before we have children, and I was the same before we had children, you know, you're cruising along, you might be working, you have a partner, you know, things are going fine most of the time. But then, you know, when you have a child, this huge emotional upheaval, like the journey into motherhood, the whole, you know, spectrum of emotions come up, from, you know, that overwhelming joy and love and connection in the beautiful moments to complete, you know, exasperation or frustration or anger. You know, it's just, it's a whole spectrum. And I think it's so tricky to navigate at times because of that, those triggers that come up, especially as our children grow. Like, I mean, and it depends on so many things, on what your past experience is. If you're, hello, he always comes in, doesn't he?
He has to be part of the conversation.
Great. Yeah, yeah, that's right. So yeah, having those feelings come up that are triggered by experiences that we go through as a parent, often if we're aware of where that is coming from. So often, especially as our children get older, that's what I was saying, you know, into the tremendous twos, for instance, is a big trigger time for a lot of parents, or when they're starting school, or even as a baby, the crying, you know, that, and it all depends on how we were responded to as a child. And I think that's a huge thing to become aware of, and then to go through the layers as you go through the journey of being a parent, being a mum, and then just realizing how the depth that is there as you drop down through, like I often call it, like a personal transformation journey through parenting, because your child brings up so much in you to be healed, if you look at it that way. So there's, you know, the crying, you know, in the middle of the night when they're young babies is very much, you know, such a trigger for so many people. If they weren't listened to, if they weren't responded to as a baby, or they were left alone to cry, it can bring up lots of feelings within us. On top of, you know, the tiredness, the not knowing what you're doing, all of those, you know, things, the pressure from, you know, your parents or your partner or your friends saying, oh, you should do this, you should do that, you should do that. And we just get overwhelmed with this, our own emotions, but also the information that we're given, well-meaning advice, all of that kind of stuff is all just sifting around in our heads. And it's really hard to separate that out without, you know, some really good support around finding our own way, and being able to be held in a space that creates the time and the space for us to navigate that. And that's what I offer parents in my work a lot, is just holding that space for them. We call it a listening time, or listening partnership, or in a group even, where we basically just support each other through whatever you're going through, whatever's coming up, you know, that needs to be heard. When it is heard, then that gives that a chance to be healed. And so when we receive that support for ourselves, we can then give that to our children. So it's but we need, it's like that whole metaphor about the cup, you know, that we need to pour in our own, you know, top ourselves up, our connection, our love, our whatever makes us light up. We need to pour that in until it's overflowing, and then we can give that to our family or to those around us. But yeah, and I think a big way of filling that cup for me and for the work that I do is that listening time, in that it really is a healing process in terms of being able to look at those triggers that you have, look at what feelings are coming up, and then when feelings are felt fully, then they can leave the body, they can leave your existence, and so it doesn't, there's not that blockage or that emotional tension being held there.
Yeah, and it's Deb said the journey is heartbreakingly beautiful. Yeah, I think that's a pretty spot on.
Sums it up.
Yeah.
That's right. I mean, there's so much in there, such a rich relationship, the parent-child relationship, and, you know, as in any relationship, but just, you know, it's just when you look at it on a, you know, personal development, personal transformation journey, there's just so much that can be uncovered and healed and, you know, brought to the light, and it's when we listen to our children in the way that we're listened to through that listening time, then that facilitates their healing as well, because, you know, things are just as big for them, you know, the not getting the blue cup, or not, you know, having someone there to play with, or whatever it might be. It's just, being able to fully meet them where they're at facilitates that healing, and then hopefully then that lessens that emotional tension that they carry around, which which I can go more into if you want to go down that road in terms of like really practical, like what is happening in our child's brains when there's challenging behavior, or we can stay more on the kind of personal mother, you know, personal journey, like that's brought up for us.
Well, I think what you just said then, like, made me think, and it's something that I actually, I don't know if I've read something that you've written or something around it, and you just talked about the blue cup, and for a child, like, you know, like as an adult thinking, I don't get the blue cup, not a big deal. You know, I've got all these other big things that are happening, but for a child, like in their world, that is big. Like, and it is real that they really want that blue cup, and when it's kind of dismissed and they're told that it's silly and you know, whatever you're upset about is not valid, basically, and not worthy of having that heard, like just shush, then it is teaching that it is that the opposite of connection.
Well, that's right. And I think you know, just going back to the blue cup example, like our children are smart in that they, you know, they will, like, the crying and the tantrums are our natural inbuilt healing mechanism. And I think that's where the paradigm shift needs to happen in terms of our parenting and our way of thinking about children. Like, that often the crying, you know, as you said, you know, we do everything to shush it, and, you know, don't have a tantrum. Oh my God, please don't have a tantrum, especially now in the you know, in a public place, or as we're trying to get out the door. You know, it brings out, you know, such rigidity and fear in so many parents. And the crying, you know, if we're triggered by it, you know, we go into a bit of a frenzy, like, oh, how do I quiet this child? Like, I've got to stop it, you know, right from very early on in a baby's life. You know, we're patting, we're rocking, we're jiggling, we're singing, we're walking, we're doing everything we can to quieten a child up. You know, obviously we check whether they're hungry or cold or wet, or, you know, those basic things. But if all of those things are being ticked off and they're still crying, sometimes all we need to do is just slow down and to connect with them. Even a very young newborn baby is just to offer that eye contact, offer your warmth, offer your presence, and say, I'm right here. I can see you're upset. I'm listening. And that, you know, babies have so much to process. They've just come into this world. There's so many things that they need to adjust to, and that the crying is the natural healing mechanism in the way that they do that. And that continues, and it's even for us as well, like, you know, the emotional tension that builds up throughout our day. Like, there could be small little hurts that happen. No matter how beautiful our child's life is, there's going to be moments that don't agree with them. So there's going to be little upsets about you know, sharing toys, or not, you know, being told what to do, or having, you know, feeling like there's no choice in where they're going or what they're doing. And so, as well as bigger hurts like, you know, illnesses or separations, or, you know, even deaths, those bigger hurts that build up in our minds, in our child's minds, so as that emotional tension. And when that has a chance to be released through crying or through laughter, through a tantrum, through, you know, physical movement, shaking, trembling, sweating, as well as, you know, often running, you know, that actual physical muscle movement. When that tension has a chance to be released, then you know, that clears away that whole kind of jam in our brain that's, you know, stopping us from thinking well, stopping our children from thinking well, or having good judgment, or being able to use their prefrontal cortex, if you know, want to go into the brain science, that kind of higher thinking part. When the limbic system part of the brain is flooded with emotion, when we're triggered, or when our child has reached that saturation point of that emotional tension that they're carrying around, it needs to come out. And so being able to listen as a child releases that emotional tension and hold the space is probably the fastest way you can get back to having your beautifully connected, cooperative, happy child again. So, you know, to give an example, so, and also as part of that, because our children are so smart and they know that this natural healing mechanism is there, they will look for pretexts or excuses to cry and to let that feeling out. And so that's where the blue cup can kind of example can come in. And they, you know, all the little hurts that built up throughout the day, you know, it might be like the straw that breaks the camel's back. Is just like, I want the blue cup, not the green cup. And they'll have a huge cry about it. And if we dismiss that and say, oh, don't be so stupid, you know, here's another cup, it's perfectly fine, then that teaches them to, okay, it's not safe. I'm going to squash that feeling down, squash all that down. No one's listening, no one's hearing me, and I'll hold it all inside. But for a child, that's really, really hard. I mean, for an adult, it's hard as well. But for a child, it's hard to hold it inside. And so it pops out in aggression. It pops out in really unworkable, challenging behaviours, this emotional tension. Like, they might be bouncing off the walls. They might be completely fussy over their eating or their clothes, or they might just absolutely refuse cooperation, or, you know, there's yelling. There's all sorts of, you know, all these things, there's challenges that we have with our children. But quite often it's that build-up of emotional tension, that's what's driving that behaviour in the first place. So if we can listen to them as they start to release it, then that clears all that away. So then they're ready to kind of think well again, and to listen to us, and to be able to be flexible, and to come back to their inherently cooperative selves. Yeah.
So with, like, if that's kind of like there's the build up, you know, and then the valve needs to be released, is there like, do you talk about I guess things you can do to, like, the build up's going to happen from time to time. It happens from me from time to time.
Yeah.
But like, I guess ways of what am I trying to say? Like, reducing the likelihood of a build up, like it kind of getting onto things, like maybe there isn't, you know, something has happened and there's not necessarily, they're not necessarily showing a whole lot of emotion, like,
Yeah, for sure. You know, you can be proactive about it, for sure, in terms of helping reduce that emotional tension, or reduce the way that it can build up. Because, you know, think about our limbic system, part of our brain is it's developed from birth, and it's always searching for someone to connect with. It's always searching for that connection. Like I mentioned at the beginning, a connection is that key. Like our children need that sense of connection in order to be able to function well. And literally they need it in order to be able to think with their prefrontal cortex. Like when they sense that disconnection and that flood of feelings comes through, it's like an emotional emergency, and their prefrontal cortex just completely shuts down, and they actually literally can't think. It's like a physiological thing. And it happens to us as well. Like we're a little bit better at sort of regulating or overriding that, but with children, so when that sense of connection is lost, that's when all those unworkable, those challenging behaviours come through. And then when we reconnect, then the thinking comes back again. So if you focus on connection proactively, then that can really help with that emotional tension, the build up. So, you know, spending some one-on-one time with your child, encouraging the laughter, the play, you know, doing those things that build that sense of connection, that build that sense of safety in the relationship, emotional safety as well, because that's the other component in terms of releasing feelings or releasing that emotional tension. Our children need to feel safe enough to be able to do that. They need to trust that we will listen, or that we'll be there for that crying, for that tantrum to be healing. Like it doesn't work to let them cry it out in their room by themselves, or it doesn't work to let them have their tantrum, you know, in another room, or leave them in the car or wherever it might be by themselves to figure it out. And that's where time out can be such a problematic thing, because at the time when our children need us the most, when they're going through a hard time and they start their tantrum or they start their unworkable behaviour, if we shut them out and move them away, that's sending a signal that, you know, in their toughest moments, we're not going to be there for them. We can't handle it. And so we need to step in with connection in those moments.
Yeah.
And that's the key to be able to then reconnect and heal. But definitely you can do that proactively as well, in terms of you know, doing things with your child that you both enjoy, that fosters that connection.
Yeah. Well, like when you were talking about, you know, the brain, like basically it's offline, like, and thinking about what they talk about now and what they use, like that kangaroo care, you know, and having once
Yeah.
you've had your baby, like holding and having them skin to skin, like that's connection. And even
Yeah.
with, like, I know they now have programs for babies that have, you know, like addicted to drugs because of what their mothers had, and people go in and actually have that skin to skin contact. Like that's connection, and
Yes.
clearly that is making a massive difference in these newborns' lives. And that, of course, it doesn't just happen then, and then there's a time when, okay, you no longer need
Yeah.
that connection.
Need it.
Like
No.
when
Literally. Yeah.
things when you're in a challenging situation, like, yeah, coming into the world, or any other challenging situation,
Yes.
that connection is still going to be so important. And
Yeah.
yeah, and that yeah, like that, I guess that time out, or sending a child to their room is the opposite of, like, getting it's getting a child to calm down when they're, you know, really the rational brain is offline.
On. Yes.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
then continuing, like, keeping them disconnected, keeping them in that, it actually is
Yeah.
with
It
that
adds.
counterintuitive.
Yeah. Yeah. It adds to that build up. Like it's not releasing the pressure valve. It's adding to that pressure that's building up. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's where, you know, it gets hard though for us as parents. That's what I was talking about in the beginning. Like, this is where, you know, all those triggers come up, because yes, it's all well and good for me to say, you know, we need to listen to our child having a tantrum, or for, you know, to have, you know, to come in with warmth and connection when they're being challenging. It is incredibly hard if you're triggered yourself. And, you know, the amount of work that I've done on this, and I still get triggered, you know, by different things with my children, yet I'm aware that it's me, it's my stuff. I'm the adult here. I can step out of this power struggle. I can, you know, step away from this. I can calm myself down and then come back in and offer that connection sooner rather than later. And that's, you know, that's where that gap has lessened with the support that I've received, is being able to, there's less time that I need to be able to switch around and go, okay, connection, that's what they need, when I'm completely triggered myself. So it's, and putting that support into place is just, it's paramount to parent, to being able to parent in this way and listen to our children.
Yes.
Because yeah, otherwise it's too hard. It's way too hard.
Yeah. It's, I mean, when just day-to-day life, before having children and you're triggered, it's hard. But
Yes.
when you have a child and you're triggered and you have the responsibility, you're the adult in this. And as well, like, the, you know, when it's, you're triggered by another adult, you know, there's kind of that self-responsibility. And but when, whatever behavior you're doing is really helping form so much for that little being, like you said earlier, like it's a transformational journey. It's a, like, it can be.
Yes. Well, that's right. And it's like it. And that's, you know, on my days where I need inspiration, or need, you know, to dig deeper to find that connection or that warmth to offer, you know, I do think about that. It's like, we're, you know, parenting in this way, or being aware as parents, it's a chance for us to change lives in the future. Like, it's a chance for us to break that cycle that's passed down generation after generation. You know, to whatever degree. There's this whole spectrum of, you know, of you know, and most parents do things a little differently to how they were parented, and you know, that's because, you know, we know more about how the brain works, so we've got more resources there for us, we've got more support, we've got all these beautiful things that support us in the journey. And hopefully our children will have, you know, even more support, or less feelings that are built up, or that less emotional tension as they go through and parent their children. But it is a generational thing, and I think that is where our role as a parent can be so incredibly powerful, because we have the responsibility or the opportunity to shape our 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 child's lives, and to offer a warm connection, and that love is that it literally does wire the brain for, you know, for connection, for, I mean, our brains are already wired for connection, but to receive it in a consistent and secure and stable way just paves the way for them to function well as they grow up and as they form relationships and then become parents. So it's, yeah, it is a powerful place to be in, but without support, that responsibility can weigh too heavily as well. And so it's coming back to that support, and also, you know, that ultimate compassion for ourselves as well. Like, we're not going to get it right all the time. There's no such thing as a perfect parent. It's, you know, we're learning, we're still healing our own wounds, our own journey that's so unique with our child, with any relationship. But yeah, it's just we need to be compassionate with ourselves as well, I think.
Yeah.
Especially when there's so much information and so many well-meaning bits of advice that, yeah, we can take it on and not feel like we're doing anything right.
Yeah, absolutely. It is so, yeah, being a parent is, you know, the most important job that you're going to do while you're on the planet, because it is that responsibility for another human life. And so, you know, most of us try to do our best in the things that we do, and absolutely all parents are doing their best. And we can, I think that having that support, again, like you said, like being able to talk to people, like talk to someone, to have them listen, so then we're able to better listen to children when they need us to listen, and then they're better able to listen to other people in their relationships down the line. It's a like priceless gift.
And that flow on effect, you know, that ripple effect that goes out into the world. Definitely.
So just it to me, it's just so important. And I've seen the difference in, you know, with one of my friends. I mean, and she's talked to me about the difference for her and her husband and their parenting, just in having some time with you, and how that's changed how they are with their children. You know, how much they've got from that. And and it's also so much about that relationship with each other, like when there's a partner as well, when there's two parents, that partnership in it.
No, it's such a a rich ground for learning, for healing and understanding. And I think you know, to be able to like often when I share this work with parents, you know, usually one parent comes along to a class or a course or a consult or whatever I'm offering, and then, you know, brings it home to the family. And often I've noted, and it was with the same with myself and my husband, that there's a kind of a wobbly period there where it's kind of everything's sort of a bit, you know, there's a bit of tension, there's a bit of like, oh, I'm not sure about this, you know, this is, you know, because it's so different often to the way that we were parented, and so different to, you know, the even our culture still. I think that's changing, and it's, you know, we are becoming more aware as a group, as a consciousness, as a collective. We're moving towards this different paradigm of treating our children and thinking about our children and our relationship with them. But if you're not surrounded by friends and family that parent this way, it can be so isolating. And you know, when you're coming up against that resistance from your partner, and, you know, probably quite normal resistance, you're bringing in these, you know, you want to listen to our child have this tantrum, like, what, are you serious?
That's ridiculous.
Yeah. And it's such a, you know, I think every family that I've worked with, you know, probably has asked me the question, or it's come up in some ways. It's like, aren't we condoning that bad behavior if we listen, if we come in with warmth, if we come in with connection when our child is being aggressive or being you know, not sharing or being uncooperative? Like, aren't we teaching them that that's okay? And that is the old paradigm. That's the kind of crime and punishment framework talking there. And it's such a, you know, we're so immersed in it, and, you know, we have been for thousands of years. So it's you know, it's going to take time to shift. But when we do shift it and see that the reason behind the aggression, behind the not sharing, the not cooperation, is that build up of emotional tension, that underlying, you know, feelings there, that feeling of disconnection, that is the cause of it. And then when we can recognize that that's the cause of it and come in with connection, then it heals it from that level. And so it's not adding layers onto it like punishment does, it just adds layers to the disconnection.
And I would imagine, I mean, you know, I talk about this, you know, unfortunately, my parenting looks very different to parenting for people whose babies are here. So I'm talking about it through my experience of talking to other parents and my experience of witnessing, and I guess also what I've looked into in preparation for Kai being here. Thinking about, like, while it's still that challenge and catching yourself in that moment, and going, okay, I'm triggered and I need to connect here, I would imagine that even for ourselves, like, that is such a gift. Like, for us, connection is so much better than the disconnection. You know, it keeps that tension going rather than, like, and that melting and that falling into that connection.
It's softening. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And I think too, that's, you know, being proactive about offering connection to our child, not just in the challenging moments, but you know, being, you know, throughout each day is really it's so helpful for us as well. Like, you know, often I ask parents to try out spending some one-on-one time with their child. Just, you know, if they've got more than one child, just pick a time when you're with the one child and do what they want to do, put them in charge. And, you know, it's such a great way to top up that sense of connection for both of you. Like, the child obviously, you know, soaks that up, laps up that attention, but for us as parents, you know, that is such a beautiful way to top up our cup as well, because it counters that feeling like that we never have enough time, or that we're not doing it well enough, or that, you know, it's not good enough. It's it counters that sense, or that kind of those beliefs that we've got, you know, that talk rattling around in our head. And yeah, it is a softening, it is a melting into that moment together. And I think, and it sustains us as well. Like we, you know, we need connection as well. It's, you know, as you mentioned before, it's not just from birth. It's throughout our whole life, and it looks a little bit differently as we grow older, but it's still very much, you know, a vital thing.
Yeah, and I just was thinking as well about the like parenting and that transformation. Like so many, you know, I'm going off this week again on on another retreat that I'm so resistant to, but I know is going to be really helpful. Just like, what am I going to mess up into? You know, and I guess that's like parenting is like it's not a retreat, obviously. It's your everyday life, but it has that potential to be transformational and, you know, exponential transformation. Like we don't need to go out and be in ceremony or be in a retreat. We can actually, through our interactions with our children, transform ourselves and the way we are in the world and with other people. Like there's such teaching from our children. And again, like you said, like that support, having that support to actually be able to kind of come out of it a little bit and look at it and see where that is, and learn where those triggers are, so that you can actually have those transformational moments and have those moments of deep connection.
Yes. Yeah, well, I mean, the whole experience is, you know, it's very much where the rubber meets the road in terms of, you know, your spiritual practice. Like it's right there. You know, they're calling you to be more patient, or to be more compassionate, or to be more self-aware. Like every single day, like you've got that opportunity. It's right there, and you know, it can be really challenging because you just. Yeah, you do. It's like, I just wish I could go and be on a retreat. A real retreat.
Oh, thank you, Sarah. Thank you.
Right.
Yeah, okay. So I'm just thinking time-wise. I like, again, I could keep going for hours. But I do know that there's probably, I know there's quite a few mothers out there that were hoping to watch, and I can see that sometimes this goes weird and you can't always see who's here, and people drop out but they haven't dropped out, so it's hard to know who's here and who's not here. But yeah, I want to be able to, for other people, other mothers, to have the time to be able to watch this. But is there anything else that you want to you know, that a little piece that you feel needs to be said?
Yeah, I think it's really, I think my message, I guess, or my work is all about that shift in this, bringing in this new paradigm in the way that we are with our children, and that how important connection is. And if you're finding it hard to connect with your child or to feel that sense of connection yourself, then it's so healing to reach out for that support, or reach out to be able to go down that rabbit hole, or to go to explore a little bit more about why it's so hard to offer that connection, because you know it's such a challenging thing in our culture to even to reach out for support, to ask for some help, because you know we're, you know, most of us really wanted to be parents, and you know wanted to, you know, so enjoyed those early days of connecting with our babies, and then when, you know, when as our children grow we find it more and more challenging, yet there's this big kind of stigma around being a mum, and you know being able to be in control and have, you know, to have it together, as such, and you know that it's, yeah, but just to admit that, God, it's bloody hard sometimes, and that it's okay. That's okay. And it's okay to ask for help, and it's okay to get that support that you need, because it flows on, that ripple effect into your family, and you're teaching by example. You know, your children are watching you and taking in way more than we probably even realize. And if you're reaching out and offering, you know, or bringing in that connection for yourself, then they know that that's a healthy thing to do as well. They don't need to do it all on their own either.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So important if we want to see something happening, if we want our children to talk to us about what's going on, then we have to be able to actually talk about what's going on for ourselves.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
Was the biggest lesson being parent gave me was letting go of control is the best approach. Sadly, only when the kids were older, poor buggers.
Yeah.
That letting go of control.
Yeah.
That old chestnut.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a big one. Yeah.
It is.
Yeah.
It is.
Because that's, you know, we're so conditioned to be, you know, to be in control of our kids, control of ourselves. You know, it's just, it's such a, yeah, it's kind of, yeah, it's kind of stifling in a way, but you know, it's also that, yeah, I think what brings into that is, you know, that undervaluing, as you mentioned earlier, about, you know, being a parent is the most important thing you'll ever do, yet it's so undervalued by society in general. Like, and I think that's, you know, that's part of why we feel like we can't just go, this is hard, because no one, you know, unless you're a parent as well, you don't get it, or you don't, you know, kind of, you don't, or even if you do get it, you don't want to show it, because it's not okay to be upset, or it's not okay to lose your, I don't want to swear.
It's fine. It's fine. You can swear. Lose your shit. Yeah.
Lose your shit. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And it happens, and I guess it is that importance of making it safe for our children, but making it safe for each other as women as well, being willing to actually go to say this is hard, and when another mother says this is hard, going yeah
I hear you. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. And you know, we also have that tendency to jump in with our own advice as well, and say, oh yeah, well, you know, that, you know, you need to do this and do that, and this is what got my child to sleep, or this is what got my child to eat or cooperate or whatever it might be. But really, sometimes, you know, we just need to be heard. We just need those feelings validated, and just to go, yeah, I hear you. I can see that it's really hard for you right now. And, and that can be so healing in itself, rather than to jump in with, you know, with more advice, with more tips and strategies and fix it things, solutions that we get from all sides.
which can make a mother feel more like she can't do it, isn't doing it right,
Yeah.
should be doing things
Yep.
differently, when that's the big
Yeah.
struggle that's happening internally already.
Yes. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's, makes you clamp down even more and suppress more. It's like, oh, I'm not going to say anything because I'm just going to be told what I'm doing wrong, and you don't want to go there. And fair enough too. So it's we need to find our sisters that create that sense of support that we need. And
So what you've said a little bit, like you have workshops and that sort of stuff. What if we have some of our mothers watching and they wanted to work with you? What are you offering?
Sure. Yeah, sure. So at the moment, my focus is with one-on-one consults, just because I've been here in Queensland less than a year, so it's still getting established here in the community. But if you are near Brisbane, I am offering some talks and workshops next term as well. So you can find everything, the details for the one-on-ones as well as workshops, at my website, which is lyralestrange.com.
Awesome. And
or I'm on Facebook as well.
Yeah, we'll share them in the group as well, so it's easy for people to find, and you can put it in the chat of this as well. Yeah.
Great, thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. I've just loved this, and it's it's left me thinking about all sorts of things, and it is such important work, and I'm so grateful that you do this work, and I'm so grateful that you joined me tonight to share this.
Yeah, well, no, I'm grateful too, because I know you've been on a huge journey this last year, and there is a part of me that wishes we could be sharing it differently with your boy here. So I'm just really grateful, and I think you're very brave to be able to talk about all this right here. So thank you for the opportunity.
My pleasure. And it's for all of those little ones, I feel a responsibility to all of them, so helping share this with other mothers and wanting to support other mothers as well, because I get to see that from outside of being in the motherhood as it looks for most mothers.
For sure. Yeah.
Oh, thank you, Sarah.
Oh, thanks, Sarah.
Thank you, beautiful sisters, for joining. Next week, as I mentioned earlier, I'm off. I'm heading off to Vision Quest next week, so I'm going to be completely off grid, so there won't be any conversation next week, but the week after we'll actually be joined, so far as I know, with the lovely Carol Sondara, who is a medium at the moment. She's in Byron, but she's about to move to New Zealand, I think, but yeah, she'll be joining us the following week, the week of the 8th. So that will be lovely, but I will give more information. Thank you so much, Lyra.
Thank you.
You take care, and we'll connect again soon.
Yay, big hug, cosmic hug. Bye.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.